going to go over a few ground rules. Number one, no one may speak until granted the floor. CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear, and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff. Members should not engage in back and forth discussion. The chair will recognize the next person to speak. The chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. The chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated out loud on the record during the meeting. When a member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. Please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom and wait to be recognized. We are now going to take attendance by roll call. Board members, you can unmute yourselves and answer present when your name is called. Angel?
Sure thing. Yolanda Brown.
Present.
Jessica Elliott.
Present.
Elsie Encarnacion is excused. James Horton.
Present.
Ivy Hume. Francis Mastroda. Beverly Pabon is excused. Andrew Padilla.
Here.
Roberto Perez.
Present.
Vinny Torres is excused. Jason Villanueva.
Present.
And Candy Vivas Vasquez. We do not have quorum. We are one short. Ivy just texted me. She's jumping on now.
Eso. Okay. Give us just a few more
There she
minutes.
is. Hi, Ivy. Calling quorum, so I'm calling your name for attendance. Ivy
Hi.
here.
Hi. Present.
Okay.
Present.
Thank you, Ivy. All right, we have quorum, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Angel, and thank you, Ivy. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and was posted online. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Committee members, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand now through Zoom. As I see no hands, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. Now, as this is our first meeting back, there's quite a few announcements to go over. So I'm going to pass that over to Angel to kind of get us up to date. Angel?
Sure. So just a few quick ones. First, HPD recently announced the designations for the 2 publicly owned sites in East Harlem. Veteran members of the committee and regular attendees to our board meetings over the last couple of years will be familiar with these, but I'll give a very, very quick refresher. In 2017, there was a rezoning passed, and as part of the points of agreement for that rezoning, there were 4 publicly owned sites that were targeted for the development of affordable housing in our district. The first 2 of which were then subject to an RFP released by the city. And recently, August 13th, the city announced the development teams that are designated for each of those sites. We have extended invitations to HPD and to the development teams for each of those projects to come and give informational presentations to this committee. And we're waiting to confirm those. More than likely November, but maybe in October, I will update the committee when I know more. But the 2 sites are the parking lot for the 25th precinct, which is across the street from the community board office at 119th Street and Park Avenue. And the other site is the East Harlem Multi-Service Center, which is on 120th Street, just east of First Avenue. It's adjacent to the, what was the name of that project? I shouldn't have said that because I forgot the name of the project now. I think it was La Promesa. Anywho, so the East Harlem Multi-Service Center is a longstanding fixture in the community, is host to a number of service providers and community-based organizations, and the new project will include space for those organizations or organizations like that as well. More details about both of the projects are in the press release, which is shared on our community board website, has been distributed to our board membership. And again, we will hear more fuller reports on both of those projects, and we'll have an opportunity to question the development teams when they come in to present. Second announcement is that at the next meeting of this committee is scheduled for October 13th. At that meeting, this committee will be voting on the Castle 3 land use application that will be presented later in the agenda, among other things. And then a couple of quick informational updates. What I've shared here is what I know. So we were given a heads up about an upcoming rezoning, the 56-62 East 125th Street rezoning. The proposed development for that rezoning is to facilitate the development of a 25-story, as described in the project description, 245-foot building. There will be a visual performing arts space. I think it'll be a hotel with the VPA on the lower floors. The applicant also anticipates a submission of a follow-up application for the chairperson, that's the chairperson of city planning, certification for a VPA bonus. More details will be circulated as we know them. But I did want to give the committee and the community a heads up that is coming. That is not yet certified, so no rush on our end. Next is we were contacted by the land use consultants for local property owner who owns the property at 2226 Third Avenue and has filed plans to develop a 10-story, 145-foot building, but is now trying to see if they can do that as of right, but they filed to see if they can get a zoning map amendment to rezone the entire site to permit life science uses. That's use group 9 on the entire site. A portion of that site is currently zoned that way, and they're seeking, they're inquiring as to whether they'll be able to do that on the entire site. More details on that also as we get them, but I wanted to give you all a heads up, like with the other item. And that's it, Andrew, back to you.
Thank you, Angel. Before we go any further, I would like to ask committee members if someone would step up and volunteer to take the notes for today's meeting. It would be nice to in the future maybe have a rolling rotation of folks so that we know in advance, but this is a very necessary shared responsibility. So who would like to step up? Not all at once.
I can take the meeting minutes.
Thank you very, very much. So just for the I just heard the voice. Is that you, Jessica Elliott?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Great.
sorry,
Okay,
I can't unmute. Yes, Jessica Elliott will take the meeting minutes.
Great, thank you. And if anyone would like to take the meeting, volunteer now to take the meeting minutes for next meeting. If anyone would like to just raise their hand, that would be fantastic. This way, you know in advance that that's going to be something you'll be doing. I see Roberto Perez. Thank you, Roberto, for stepping up. So we will have Jessica Elliott writing today's minutes, and then Roberto, he will take October's. Thank you very much to the both of you. Moving forward, now that we've got our announcements out of the way, we'll be moving into our presentations. As Angel mentioned, we will not be voting on the Castle 3 presentation today. We're gonna see it. get to speak with the folks from Fortune and HPD. But again, just want to give a summary before we get into that 15-minute presentation. This proposed development, and this is from the minutes which we all received, will consist of a new construction of a 15-story building with approximately 81 affordable units for formerly homeless and low-income individuals and households, plus a superintendent's unit, space for supportive and social services. The proposed use is a nonprofit institution with sleeping accommodations. HPD is seeking designation of a UDAA and approval of a UDAAP, the disposition of city-owned property, and a zoning special permit to facilitate the development. So as we're dealing with public land, we not only have Fortune Society, but we also have HPD, who's going to be speaking with us today. So if y'all are ready, we can turn it over to you. And if you could just identify yourself, your organization, and begin the presentation. As I said, you have 15 minutes. Be generous. It's now 6:58, so say 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Andrew. Angel, if you can allow Toby to share her screen, that would be really helpful. Thank you so much.
Sure. I think I have Toby in the list of panelists, so she should be able to present. Yes, there you go.
Thank you. And sorry, I need to apologize first because my camera doesn't work tonight. So my camera will be off today during today's meeting, and sorry about that. So good evening, Committee Board 11 and the committee members. My name is Joan Huang, a borough planner with the HPD Manhattan Planning Division. I'm joined by my colleague, Felipe Corte, Deputy Director of the Manhattan Planning, and our development partners, the Fortune Society and the Layer Design and the consultant team tonight. So we are here to present the Castle 3 project located at 107 to 111 East 123rd Street. It is a supportive and affordable housing project. The site contains 3 contiguous vacant city-owned lots, and the proposed project will be 15-story buildings with approximately 82 affordable units. So 60% of the unit will be supportive housing, serving the formerly incarcerated individuals, and 10% of which will for the homeless individuals. And the remaining 30% of unit will be affordable for the household earning up to the 60% of AMI. So just a little bit background here. So HPD released a request for qualification for supportive housing program in 2013, and the development team was selected in 2018. The land use action needed to facilitate the proposed project include a disposition of a city-owned land and a special permit to allow an increase in floor area for the community facility used with sleeping accommodation. So we present this project a couple of times to Committee Board 11 during the pre-ULURP stage, and the project was certified on August 30th, 2021. And now we are in the ULURP stage. So we are here to seek your support and the feedbacks tonight. So now I will turn the presentation over to our development team for further details of the project.
So is Stanley Richards in the room to start the presentation off for Fortune?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, before you guys start, is there a way to put the presentation in a format that's a little bit more viewable?
Is that better? Can you see that?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Stanley Richards. I'm the former executive vice president of Fortune Society and first deputy commissioner of the New York City Department of Corrections. I want to tell you a little bit about Fortune, the work that we do, and the vision for what we have for Castle 3. Fortune Society's mission is to support successful reentry from incarceration and promote alternatives to incarceration, strengthening the fabric of the community. We know as a reentry organization, providing vital services for people when they come home from jail and prison is a critical component to how we help build healthier communities. The other part of our work is providing pathways for people to rebuild their lives without going to being incarcerated. As a formerly incarcerated man of color who has a 97-year-old grandmother that lives in Wagner Projects to this day and has been there in that projects for decades, I can tell you that Fortune's work has been vital in my life. I am the first formerly incarcerated person, the second in charge of the Department of Corrections because of the work that I've done when I came home from prison at Fortune Society. When all other organizations was telling me how I wasn't qualified and what I needed to do in order to get a job, Fortune was the organization that really walked the talk. So I stand here today in this role, helping people rebuild their lives from the inside because of the work that Fortune did and Fortune provided me when I came home from prison. We provide a range of services. Fortune has evolved over its 55 years of services to a holistic one-stop shopping, where we provide wraparound services that include education, employment, licensed outpatient mental health treatment, licensed outpatient substance abuse treatment, HIV/AIDS case management, food and nutrition, independent living skills, a range of services that people really need to rebuild their lives once they are released from incarceration or as they are being diverted from incarceration. So I am really, really pleased to support the Castle 3 that will provide critical services for both Fortune clients and clients from that community. I know firsthand that Fortune's presence is a presence that speaks to the safety, health, and well-being of the communities that we operate in. So I look forward to questions, comments, and continued dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to introduce the project team. Can people hear me?
Can hear you pretty well.
Thank you. So the applicant for the project is the Fortune Society and HPD. Fortune has been working closely with the design team, including Mark Ginsberg and Toby Cornejo, who is representing Curtis and Ginsberg Architects tonight, and Bright Power, the green building and sustainability consultants on the project. My name is Esther M, and I'm joined by my colleague Rachel Goodfriend from A. Larrabee Consulting, and we are the development consultants to Fortune Society. Jeff Mulligan is also here representing Kramer Levin, the land use attorneys.
What we are proposing is to build quality, affordable housing in East Harlem that will include 82 apartments, 82 units for New Yorkers earning up to 60% AMI, serving extremely low and very low income residents. And that's something we heard from the community board when we first started engaging, that it was important to make sure that our units were really affordable for those who are in the community who need that valuable resource. 58 of the units will be reserved for homeless, formerly incarcerated individuals, and 24 affordable units, including one for the super. We will have, as I said, on-site comprehensive services, including counseling and workforce development. And I know firsthand, as I said earlier, my grandmother lives in Wagner Projects. I've done some work walking around the community, engaging people on the streets with Diana Ayala. And I know that community needs comprehensive services that includes counseling, workforce development, and other vital resources to build and sustain a healthy community.
So the project includes 58 supportive and homeless units in which tenants are expected to pay 30% of their income towards rent. The remaining community units will be marketed toward households earning between 30 and 60% AMI, with rent ranges from $483 for a studio at 30% AMI to $1,530 for a 2-bedroom at 60% AMI.
Hi, this is Jeff Mulligan from Kramer 11. Can you all hear me?
We hear you, Jeff.
Okay, great. So I'm happy to be part of the project team. This is a wonderful project, and I'm going to speak a little bit about where the site is and introduce the project. It's located on the north side of East 123rd Street between Park and Lexington. It has excellent access to public transit. The subway stations for the 4, 5, and 6 trains are at 125th and Lex, and the Metro North station at 125th Street and Park. Next slide. So the site is located within an R72 zoning district, which allows both residential and community facility uses. You see the site there in the red box. Next slide. We've got a couple of photos here of the site along 123rd Street, which, as you can see, is currently vacant and has been vacant for many years. Next slide. So the application filed by HPD is for, as was mentioned earlier, the disposition of city-owned property, as well as a special permit, which will allow us to use a floor area ratio of 6.5. Which will permit an increase in the size of the building from approximately 30,000 square feet to approximately 55,000 square feet. The increase in the amount of floor area will allow us to provide many more units of affordable housing at the site. The building will, however, fully comply with the height and setback regulations of the underlying zoning. Next slide. And now I think I turn it over to Tony.
Before Tony starts, I just want to let y'all know you're nearing your 5-minute mark.
I'm still muted, sorry. I'm Toby with Curtis and Ginsberg, the architect on the project. This is the same site, just a little closer in than what Jeff presented. So you can see here the site is in the middle of the block on the north side of the street. And we're utilizing the alternate setback regulations to create a front courtyard. And then we have our rear yard, both which will be landscaped and also be the roof for program that's underneath in the full cellar. And currently there are several vacant lots on the north side of the site. So the south elevation, which faces 123rd Street, is comprised of brick on the lower floors and then 2 setback facades on the upper floors and a large solar panel plane on the roof. And we're utilizing some of the spacing of some of the commercial architecture in the neighborhood to create a facade that fits in well with the neighborhood, but that also can bring in a lot of light from the south. These are larger windows that will all be composed of glass that will mitigate the sound from the adjacent train as well. So the building is designed to be an all-electric building, except for the generator on the roof, since it's a high rise. It's going to have a very insulated envelope and utilize a lot of passive house principles. And it will get some of its electricity from the solar panels on the roof. And it's going to have ERV ventilation and centralized VRF heating and cooling. These are 2 views taken from the north here on the left. This is a view approximating what you would see from the Metro North platforms. This is the view that you would see before any of these vacant lots are developed. And I also just want to point out we're right on the edge of the East Harlem Corridor Special District, which has in it height regulations that extend up to 275 square feet. So this is likely the view that you'll see early on. but at some point we expect that this will be covered up by future development. From the south, here's what you would see from the trains going north on Park Avenue. And again, you can see these low buildings next to it in the future East Harlem corridor. So our building is 154 square feet, but the anticipated height of the adjacent ones is 275. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Joby.
I was just going to say, and then finally here at the front, at the sidewalk level, what you would see and feel from the street, we working hard to have a very sort of friendly, green, welcoming space at the front that will not only provide shade to this front courtyard, but that will provide visual interest as you walk down the street. And the community spaces within the building, a couple of them are located right here. So when you're inside doing your laundry or in the community room, you can see out here into the street.
And as in our building in West Harlem, we're committed to being good neighbors, so that whole front space will have cameras, so we'll have eyes on the block. We want that space to be welcoming and to be an asset to the community, and we're committed to that. I just wanted to say that because that's very important for us. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just sit. Yep.
Yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead, Stanley.
The next couple of slides are slides of our supportive service space, the bike room, and the kinds of services we'll be offering to our participants and to members in the community. We're going to be having a computer lab where community members will be able to have access to it. We'll be able to provide services and be a real resource to the community. As I said, I did a walkthrough tour a number of times with Diana Ayala. I understand the development that's happening on 125th Street. And she really articulated what she heard from the community members in terms of a vision for that community. And the vision is really to have resources for the community so that families can live in healthy environments and thrive. And what we're adding is a piece of that vision where we will be an asset to this community, both by way of the services we offer and our commitment to community safety, community health and well-being, and community partnership. And here's a couple of renditions of what the building's support space will look like. We'll have a teaching kitchen, meeting rooms, there'll be open space in the back, and these will be spaces where we want to engage the community. When we presented last time at the board, we talked a little bit about the teaching kitchen, providing food distribution, something we do in West Harlem right now, where we distribute weekly food to over 200 people. We want to be a resource to this community, and we're planning our building to be just that.
So on the upper floors in the residential portion of the building, we've got 4 different typical layouts, and they're fairly intimate floor. On the second floor are the services for the residents, the laundry and the community room, and 5 additional apartments. And then as you go up the building, there are 7 apartments per floor for the first few floors above that, 7 studios. And then on the upper floors, we introduced some of the larger units, the 1-bedrooms and the 2-bedroom units. And so in total, there are 82 units, including 1 supers unit.
So there are 82 units in total with 69 studios, 8 1-bedroom and 5 2-bedroom apartments. About 70% of the units will be supportive and homeless, and the remaining 30% will be reserved for low-income individuals. There will be 1 2-bedroom unit reserved for a live-in superintendent.
And finally, when we talk about partnership, we really mean partnership. We have been talking to this community board. We've been talking with some of the local elected officials. We met with Gail Brewer, Robert Rodriguez, Bill Perkins. I've done a number of tours with Diana Ayala, Brian Benjamin, who is now our Lieutenant Governor, are all partners in our work. Because here's what we know at Fortune, is that crime prevention, healthy communities, stronger families starts with being able to provide resources to those most in need. And we all know that some of the hardest hit communities are Black and brown communities in our city. And Fortune's commitment from its founding in 1967 has always been to hear people, listen to people, and to see people. And we do that by making sure our services are informed by those most impacted, both from the community and who walk through our doors and their family members. And we're making a commitment to this community board that that's who we will continue to be. Joanne Page, the executive director and CEO, president and CEO, is with us today and available for any questions. We're making a commitment to be good neighbors.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Really appreciate all sides for bringing that information to us. At this time, it is 7:19. I'd like to open the floor up to our committee members to ask any questions they might have of the presenters that were here today. You raise your hand. I'll call on you in the order that we see the hand. Members of the public, you will also be allowed to be part of this discussion, of course. So just also please raise your hand if you have a question, and you'll be called on once we get through the members' concerns and questions. I see Yolanda Brown.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for the presentation. My question, I have two questions actually, but my first question is, what is the process and the procedure for one becoming a resident of the development? And yeah, basically, let's start there.
We set up, we follow the fair housing process and guidelines. So we advertise broadly to make sure that people are informed of our process and opening. We will have a housing provider who does screening and enrollment to do the first level of interviews and making sure they meet the criteria based on income and other criteria. And then we do, as Fortune, for those who are homeless and in our homeless units, will be interviewed by our Fortune staff and screened and accepted based on their eligibility for the units.
Okay, thank you. And
Yolanda,
yes.
this is Felipe Cortez from HPD. I will also complement Stanley's answer by saying that the units would also be advertised, the affordable units would be advertised on Housing Connect. So people will need to create a profile there and submit their applications through the portal. That's going to be for the portion of the project that's going to be affordable units. Okay. And for the supportive units, if I'm correct, that's going to be through DHS and HRA, and obviously Fortune Society will work with them on the process, but mostly the affordable units will be posted on Housing Connect.
This is Joanne Page. We also really want to encourage local residents of the community to be applying. So we're going to go out of our way to be disseminating the neighborhood information because we want to maximize the number of people who live in this community board who end up applying.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your answers. And the reason why I asked, because I want to make sure that I can hear that there would be some things in place to ensure that the population for which the project was intended are actually the ones who are going to be the majority who are taking advantage of the residents. That is reentry, correct?
That's correct, Ms. Brown. Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
that is
Thank
our
you.
mission.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you know, our mission is to serve people who are formerly incarcerated and people coming out of incarceration. So that is the reason we're creating this building, because we see so many people coming home really struggling and unable to find a safe place to live.
Yes, it's
Thank
definitely,
you.
time intentions are not always realized. That's why I ask.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda, for that question. Does any other committee member have a question for the team here today? Any points of clarification? Anyone? Anything at all?
Could I add one final comment? We've been serving this community for over 50 years, and the opportunity to create permanent, affordable, and supportive housing is something we're tremendously excited about. And when we did it in West Harlem, we made a commitment to the community, which is that we would be present and you could always find us if there were questions or issues. And Vaughn Jackson has been attending the community board meetings regularly and will continue to do that as we build the building, as we open the building, as we run the building. Because if there ever are any concerns or any thoughts about how we can do our job better, or people that you need to refer, we want you just to be able to turn around in your chair and speak to a fortune person.
And I'm here right now.
We certainly appreciate your willingness to engage with the community board and respond to any questions and concerns. Yolanda, is that a new question or is your hand?
Yes, since no one else, came up, I figured let me take one more opportunity. My question is more structural. Given the building is totally electric, what percentage of the electricity of the energy will be generated through the solar panels?
I can answer that. It's going to probably be somewhere between 20 and 30%. We haven't finalized all of the design, and so I can't give you an exact answer, but that we're maximizing the panels to generate as much electricity as possible on site.
Okay, and with that pretty much falls in line with some of the requirements, the designations, right? How can we increase the energy that's generated via the solar panels?
Really, this is the problem. As a building gets taller, the roof area as a percentage of the building area goes down. And we're really already putting in all the solar panels that we can in an efficient manner.
Okay.
So there really isn't much way that any way we could significantly increase it.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda, for that follow-up. Do any other committee members have a question for the team here? A number of folks here. It's not just a question for question's sake. If there are none, that's fine. They will be back, and we will be considering a motion regarding this in October. I just wanted to know before I go ahead and send it over to the attendees, the general public. I see Ivy's hand is up. I will recognize her and then move over to the public.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the presentation. And I think the mission is really great. So I'm very excited to see all the work you guys have done for this. I just have one comment, less than a question. I think one thing that kind of struck me about the way the building appears is it seems to have a lot of the same kind of like design approaches as a lot of the buildings going up in the neighborhood right now. So it's kind of like this patchwork of different facade textures, like a red brick and then a white stucco and then a gray stucco. If you've seen the Sendero Verde project that's going up on Park Avenue and 111th Street, that's one example of it, where the side elevation facing Park Avenue, where the Metro North goes, is basically like a patchwork of these bold colors. I just want to comment on this because I feel like there are these trends where now all the architects building in our neighborhood want the buildings to look this way. And I find I have an aversion to that because I have an aversion to sameness. And I don't know why we want things to all look the same. So I guess it's less of a question than really a prompt for the designers working on this. I mean, I think again, like as far as the sustainability and the mission of the project, it's fantastic and the layouts look great. I just really think that if we're building something that's so important for the community and I love the array of solar panels on the top and how visible that is, but how can we bring the same kind of like innovation and sort of challenge and excitement to the other 4 facades, which as a very tall building in the neighborhood, it's going to be super visible. And, you know, I think it deserves the same importance as the roof. Thanks. And if the architect wants to respond to that, that would be great. Maybe it is a question, I guess.
Mark, do you want to take that, or
I can
shall I?
respond to some degree, which is on the rear facade, we wanted a very light color to bring as much light down to the courtyard in the north facing facade. The west facade is likely to be blocked by another building in the next few years. And one of the other things that happens is we have limited funding, and so we tend to spend more money and do more detailing on the street facing facade, which is going to be viewed by the public. But we've taken a fair amount of time and care in detailing all the facades to, we feel, make them as attractive as possible. And I realize that what it looks like in style is very much in the eye of the beholder. And there do seem to be trends in architecture, and buildings are somewhat fit with the period they were done. And I'm not sure there's much more I can answer that. Toby, do you have anything else you can say?
Well, I was just going to say that we are looking at the sides, and we had one idea about a possible symbol on the west side, knowing that it's quite prominent. But we've studied it and learned that it's a sign, and so we're not going to do that for zoning reasons. But we are the 2 sides of the building, as Mark mentioned, we are trying to save some money there using a different material, but the material also gives a lot of flexibility. So by the time you see us next month, we will have probably something a little different on those 2 sides. And we'll take your comments to heart and take a look at those and see what we can do, because we do recognize that it's going to be very prominent, and we all want to make sure that we're showing something that the community is excited about and that shows the commitment to the neighborhood.
We also, just to add something, is that if you look at the front facade and the ground floor level, we went out of our way to create a green welcoming space and to make sure at the same time that our 24/7 security has line of sight of the street, because we both want safety and welcoming. And I think we've achieved that with what pedestrians will be seeing as they walk by the building.
Thank you very much, Ivy, for the question. I was going to go to the public, but I just saw, Jason, was your hand up?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair. I had just 2 questions, not necessarily to be answered today, but more for comment and for review prior to the vote next month. I'm interested in the funding resources for this project. And my second question, this meeting as well as during the pre-ULUP, there's a lot of discussions about or should I say there's a lot of gentlemen's agreements about the community givebacks. I would like to see a list of that provided by Fortune Society. And then like my final recommendation for Fortune Society, I think and forgive me, I think the gentleman that was sharing mostly today was from the Department of, I wrote DOC, Mr. Richards. I'm just interested in seeing Fortune Society. I thought Mr. Richards worked for Fortune Society. So it's just an interest to, to request. It doesn't have to happen necessarily, but because you guys have more than the corporation has more than enough representation. But I think it's just some recommendations so we could, as a community, could welcome our potential new neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jason. And let me clarify. I recently transitioned from Fortune to the Department of Correction as the first deputy commissioner. I've been at Fortune for over 30 years. My heart and my soul is at Fortune. And while I've changed where I do my work, the work I've done at Fortune is in helping people see that they are better than and more than the crime or conviction they may have experienced, that they could be and will be with the support of organizations like Fortune to be better, because I had the opportunity to give back and be better because of organizations like Fortune. So I am, my current role is as the first deputy commissioner of the New York City Department of Correction, but my life's work is tied to Fortune, including the work I'm doing right now, changing the system from the inside. So I appreciate that, Jason, and we would love to give you a tour of our service center. Come over and take a look at our West Harlem building, because that's an important partnership and experience that you should have, because you can see our work firsthand. And I still say our, because my heart, and as I said, my soul is at Fortune, although my role is different.
We asked Stanley to present because when we had him set up to present originally, he wasn't at the Department of Corrections. And we wanted to stay consistent, but we'll give you information on the funding resources. Do you mean both the capital and the service part? Because we can give you both. And in terms of community givebacks, one of the things we did as we were in the early stages of applying to the community board was we did a very detailed document about local hiring, which is something we take enormously seriously. And we can share that with you again, and also talk about how the
I'm sorry, maybe I wasn't clear. It wasn't for the application as far as like our housing and affordability, our Community Board 11's affordability and employment guidelines. I know that's a document we provide to all development teams when they come to present. It was more of some of the community givebacks that you guys were talking about with, it was mentioned, loosely throughout the last two sessions. So I don't think it would be formal what I'm requesting.
Yeah, we're really glad to give it to you. It's very important to us that we be an asset to the community. And we'll talk about what we did and are doing in West Harlem and what our intentions are in this building. And we'll submit it in written form just so you have it.
Thank you. We would appreciate that. With that, I'd like to go to the public attendees here. I see a hand from, and thank you, Jason. I see a hand from Tamika Mapp. Tamika. So I apologize, Tamika. I am attempting, I've asked you to unmute, but I'm not sure if that is functioning. We have been having technical difficulties today.
Okay, I found it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew. My question is for Fortune Society. Some of our community members are behind bars. What outreach are you going to do for them to get like first dibs to come into housing? And then my second question is, things happen sometimes, and sometimes our members lose their job. What leeway or how much time will they be getting served eviction papers from these housing?
So let me start with the question about folks behind bars. Because this funding is connected to HPD, we have to pull people from the shelters. But what we're finding is that people go right from release from incarceration into the shelters. And the population we'll be targeting will be people with histories of incarceration. The other thing is Fortune sees between 7,000 and 9,000 people a year looking for help. And that includes people who got released a minute ago as well. And we do work on Rikers Island, and we get a couple of thousand letters a year from folks who are in prison looking for help with their release plans. So we expect that we're going to be housing many people who are just coming out, either through this or through our other programs. But this is our priority population. In terms of our tenants and what happens if they don't pay rent, we move heaven and earth to help them get through that problem. We know that for a lot of our affordable tenants, they are one paycheck away from being unable to pay rent. And so we work with them. We have our counselors willing to be available to them. And we just make every effort we can to give more chances, to help in any way we can. And eviction is very rare for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions from the public, or I see one question from the public, that is Jessica Morris, fellow CB member, but taking the time to show up to a committee that she is not on. So always want to shout that out and appreciate it. Jessica, I'm going to unmute you now. There you are, Jessica.
Thanks, Andrew. I just want to, not so much a question as a statement of support for the work that you're doing and for the commitment to the community that you're making. And put a note in the chat to you all, but leading the spirit of development in the corridor. I think you will be the tallest building for a while, but not for a long while. And I think that is a strong statement to the direction that development will go along Park Avenue. I would hope that that you all continue to engage with the community board with different committees that we have. I vice chair the Public Safety and Transportation Committee. So the work you're doing is connected there with Eyes on the Street and the good practices you are working on at the front facade of the building at the ground level. Human Services is a committee we have who I'm sure would like to hear about the work that Fortune will be doing once you're operational. I guess my question is, when will you be tenanting and be operational?
Our target is 2024.
Thank you.
But we also can go to the Human Services Committee sooner because we serve this community and we really want to hear where we're needed.
Thank you. Okay. If there are no further questions from attendees or from our committee members, I want to say thank you to the presenters today. Again, we will be taking up a motion on this at the next land use meeting. But for now, thank you very much for coming today to respond to our questions and share your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice. Have a good night. Take care.
Have a good night. Our next item will be a committee discussion and vote on land use application number N21043ZRY, the open restaurants text amendment. And before we get into that discussion, I'd like to just quickly, if it's all right with you, George, just pass over to George to give a few of his thoughts on what we've all hopefully gotten a chance to review. But you know, this is kind of an interesting moment, right? We're trying to talk about how we're going to formalize something that we've already seen take place over the last year. And so it would be great to have George just explain a bit of what would kind of be different with this text amendment than what we've seen so far, particularly because, as I stated at the beginning, we will be expected to come to a position after our discussion tonight. So, George, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, okay, sure. I don't have any visual materials prepared like I normally do. I'm just going to talk really just for a couple of minutes on this. The purpose of this is to make the this zoning text amendment is to lead up to making the outdoor restaurants, which have been put in place because of the pandemic, permanent and legal. Right now, under current zoning, land use cafes, restaurants, outdoor cafes have rules on where they can locate, and there's also other rules about how big they can be and all of this. And what this is about really is to remove all of that from zoning, right? And there's a very real question of why it was in zoning in the first place. It's a decision made in 1980. These are activities that aren't on zoning lots, and that's typically what zoning is for. But you know, there's this question of the rules are going to be removed from zoning, and then later down the road, there are going to be new rules adopted and then managed by DOT and what is it, Department of Consumer Affairs or something like that, where essentially the DOT is going to develop these rules and that they're going to be put in place at a later date. And you know, so there's an element of faith here that those rules will be good because they're not coming back to you, because it's not going to be in zoning anymore. And so you're not going to have a review of that later on. But you know, the intention clearly is to make these the outdoor cafes that you've seen during the pandemic permanent, but all of the rules to do that haven't been written yet. Andrew, is that the kind of that's all I have? You have questions that you want me to get into, or I know that people from DCP are here. They could probably answer questions as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If that's all on your end, then it would be great if DCP has anything to chime in on before we turn it over to our committee.
Hi, I'm also trying to unmute. This is Jose Trucios from the Department of City Planning. Yeah, I don't know if there are any particular questions that you guys want me to answer on this end, but to the extent of what George indicated, the zoning text amendment will be removing the geographic restrictions currently in place that prohibited restaurants from applying to a sidewalk cafe. Currently, that doesn't apply to the roadway program. Zoning does not interfere with the street on the roadway. So what the text amendment in front of you is essentially just removing those restrictions and allowing over 10,000, not 10,000, over you know, I can't recall right now how many of the specific sidewalk cafes are in place, but there are you know 11,000 restaurants participating in both in the sidewalk cafe and in the roadway program. So the removal of this zoning restriction will allow them to be able to apply for a license. And it's also important to highlight that, you know, that number, that 11,000, or sometimes, you know, in different community boards is a larger number, is given because a lot of these are self-certified in one option, and also because indoor dining is still limited. So we do anticipate the number of restaurants that are currently participating to be reduced as we roll out the program in 2022, 2023, given the governor's extension of the emergency order. That number will be reduced to a lesser number. We don't have the statistics for that yet. But yeah, if you have any questions specific to the text or any clarifications that you need here.
Thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to our committee. If you have a question, please click the raise hand function and I will call on you. Yolanda, I see your hand. After we get through our committee, we will turn it over to the public attendees. For now, I see Yolanda and then Jason Villanueva.
Thank you so much for the acknowledgement. My question has to do with the transition. Okay, understanding why we're moving out of zoning, but what happens in the interim? Where's the governance? Who will be governing what happens in this scenario?
My understanding is that the program that's currently in place will be continued until permanent regulations are put in place that are going to be administered by the Department of Transportation.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to make a comment for the public safety to be taken into account. There's a lot of concern. I'm sorry. There was a lot of concerns with the garbage with these cafes and some of the site lighting that got obstructed. So there's lighting in place, and I don't need to preach to HPD. You guys know the zoning that's in place, and then these cafes got put in, and we voiced the same concern about pedestrian safety and ensuring that no heinous or violent crimes happen.
Did you get cut off, or was that the end of your comment? I had a signal drop here, Jason.
That was the end.
Thank you, Jason. I can just answer really quick to that. So, part of moving the program to the DOT's purview is to allocate all of the roadway and the sidewalk cafe under the same oversight of a program of a department that already have information about traffic counts and also vehicular traffic, the bike lanes. So everything that is in the public realm that is kind of governed by DOT. As we develop this program, we realize that it makes a lot more sense for DOT to be in charge of this, the program, to ensure that these things are being taken in consideration in tandem as they move forward. It's also, also wanted to mention that this is a city-led task effort. So like Department of Sanitation, NYPD, FDNY, Department of Health, their small business services, they are all currently working as a task force to develop the program. We still have a bit of 2 years to go. I understand that, some questions have been specifically about what the rules and guidelines are at the moment, but we still are developing those. And through the community board process of bringing this to community boards at the zoning text amendment, we're getting a lot of the recommendations from the community board, and we'll be incorporating those into the design and of the guidelines and the rules that are forthcoming.
I will volunteer something. I did review some other recommendations that have already been made by other Manhattan community boards. There are two. And one was almost unanimously approving it, and the other was almost unanimously disapproving it, which I thought was really interesting. And I think it has a lot to do with what the experiences are in the area with these uses on the street. Some places have had good experiences and some places haven't had good experiences. There are some, I think, valid concerns. I mean, one of the community boards had said that you could put a sidewalk cafe outside a grandfathered restaurant in a residential district, and that was concerning to some. But a response maybe, or something, a consideration maybe, well, if it's there already, is it causing problems for the community board, right? Is Angel getting calls from the community about noise and things like that? And are you all aware as community leaders, as you hear from people, are people complaining about these things? I mean, that should be a consideration that you have when you think about this.
And also, like, sidewalk cafes will continue to come back to the community boards for approval. That is part of like what will remain in place. I know a lot of community boards have raised that issue. So if a grandfather restaurant wants to apply for a sidewalk cafe, they will still have to come back to the community board, and you guys will be able to review the application and voice your concerns that way. Previously, before zoning, they wouldn't even be allowed to apply for the sidewalk cafe. And a lot of those restaurants will have to either reach out to DCP for a rezoning or overlay, and it was very difficult and very cost effective. So we also like see value on this. But the community board will still have the recommendation approval part of the application process, and it's also under development that the Roadway Cafe might also have some limitations to what that involvement of community board approval will be.
So just, I guess a question either for DCP or for George. Sorry, I see your hand, Jason. Just wanted to get in and clarify. So from here on, if someone wanted to put up a sidewalk cafe, they wouldn't be going through zoning. They would essentially go through, they would come to the community board, but they would essentially go through DOT. So then this would go through our Public Safety and Transportation Committee.
Depending on what committees are needed. You also have the SLA, the liquor license also application process. So those will still remain in place. And zoning is removed from this and allows applicants to apply. But for now, not just the removal of zoning, because zoning is currently suspended until 2022, at the end of 2022. So restaurants can continue to self-certify until I think we still are allowing it to self-certify until the end of the emergency program. But after, when we roll out the permanent program, they will have to go through application process.
Right, and the issue that some people have is that the application process isn't written yet, right? is there's a lot of like, well, what is it going to be in the future? What are the requirements going to be? What kind of structure? All of that stuff, none of that's written, right? And it's something that will be determined. And, the community board's community board specifically won't have a say on it, right? Because it won't go through the land use process.
Thank you, George, for clarifying that. A lot of these details are still up in the air. I see a hand from Jason Villanueva.
Yeah, Chair, I was just recognizing George's recommendation. I think it really captures some of the anxiety and concerns, particularly that have been brought up by some of the constituents to us, with, possibly entertaining a condition, whether approval or not, I'll leave that to the committee. But a condition of for one, ensuring that the process goes through SAPO and or the license and, through SAPO, so then that way it could get to the community board. And then second, a little emphasis on the Department of Transportation ensuring public pedestrian safety. I deal with it in construction all the time, and a lot of push off from the DOT could be to other regulatory agencies. But in this case, since they're taking this work under their course, I believe it would be in the interest of the public, regardless of borough or district, that the DOT take the lighting seriously.
Thank you, Jason, for those concerns. That was not a question. That was just a statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other committee members have a question or comment before I get some feedback from those in the public?
Andrew, would you recognize me to just share a couple of things on process?
Of course.
Okay. So just to clarify, because a couple of folks have referenced like our process here and which committee it would go to for us. So currently, because it's like the sidewalk cafes are being referenced and, as it relates to zoning, just to clarify, it's relevant when it applies to where currently sidewalk cafes have been permitted, like prior to the emergency, right? So like zoning spoke to that. In the places where sidewalk cafes were permitted, it was the State Liquor Authority process and the Department of Consumer Affairs processes that then would refer to the community board. So we've been reviewing those sidewalk cafe applications, from both of those agencies. DOT had nothing to do with it. So this is a new thing that's being proposed, a new agency to be involved in this process. So I wanted to provide that clarification, and I did want to ask a question, if I could, Andrew. And I know that a lot of this is to be determined, and it's what frankly I've been finding challenging. I don't like encouraging the board to sign blank checks. Is there an enforcement mechanism being contemplated at the Department of Transportation for these sidewalk cafes? Because inevitably there will be challenges and questions and concerns, and those challenges, questions, and concerns need to be addressed to an agency to resolve any issues that may be presented. And I wanted some clarification for the board's consideration on that question. Currently, I'll give it a nightmare scenario. There are sidewalk cafes that are completely in violation and continue to exist without any enforcement removing them from the violating location. That's under current rules, right? In our community, we don't have that issue because we have very few, I think like 2. Other communities have tons of these things, and it's great, but from what I hear from my, DM colleagues, it isn't great everywhere. So one would hope that you could turn to an agency for relief when there is a problem or where there's relief needed.
You space in the chat the actual process for application for the sidewalk cafes for everyone to see. So when people apply, or when a restaurant apply for a sidewalk cafe, it does come directly to the community board. And that is not just on the SLA. So like that, just those are other licenses. And everything, it was not under the Department of Transportation's purview, but it was under DCWP, which was former Department of Consumer Affairs. So DCP will essentially not be involved in this process unless it was an enclosed cafe, which is what most of the text was referring to, that is also being removed, as enclosed cafes will no longer be permitted. That's just one clarification. The other thing with Department of Transportation, I know Blackwood is also here from the Department of Transportation, so if you can feel free to add to this. But I know enforcement is being added to actually they are ramping up a new unit for this. A lot of these new self-certified restaurants were part of they didn't know so far how the rules were applicable to them, or they were following persisting the rules. So like DOT has been trying to catch up with a lot of this that has been happening, and is part of the operating and development of the rules that we want to have something similar as what currently is the licenses renewal, where you come back to the community board and you come back to Department of Transportation and you evaluate your performance over the last 2 years or over the year to renew your license. And there will be also a process for removing or revoking license for those that have not complied. I understand that that's still under development, and it might not be the answer that we want to hear now, but it's also something that community boards have been advocating for and adding into the resolutions. And we see that a lot of value into it, because that's also how we can track this. If there are any specific locations that you guys know, I know the Department of Transportation has been taking locations of those specific problematic new restaurants that are having sidewalk cafes or either the roadway cafes, and then you can share those with me, and I can send them directly to the Deputy Borough Commissioner. We're working together on those. So if you have those, you can send them to me directly, and I will make sure that we pass along.
Thank you for the response, and I see Ivy's hand. I'm going to call on her in a second. I just want to say thank you to folks for trying to dig into the details of this, because whatever we come out with at committee, we're going to have to make, defend and make some sense of it at full board, right? And as Angel noted, people have had varying experiences with these. So I will recognize Ivy for her question or comment. And then after that, I will go to Jessica Elliott.
Just quickly, I think I don't know if there's a mechanism by which we can ensure that the open restaurants are required to maintain certain like sanitary standards. And I think this is a problem we've noticed with the increased rats and everything. I think we need to figure out how to take the restaurants to task for cleaning up after themselves. And I don't know how to do that. So, but it's just something I think we need to keep in mind as the regulatory body changes.
Thank you, Ivy. Unless there's a response to that, I will recognize Jessica Elliott.
My comment was going to be along the same lines, excuse my cat. The Environment, Open Space and Parks Committee has been talking about this also, and there are community concerns about longstanding issues with trash collection and trash buildup and rats and vacant lots. And so the concerns Ivy mentioned about sanitation and the responsibility of restaurants and also Department of Sanitation is really important, and especially in our neighborhood where this is a recurring issue that has yet to be solved. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. I see, Jose, that you just put something into the chat.
Yeah, so, and it's just part of like highlighting a lot of these problems, as Jessica has mentioned, had already existed and had not been addressed. You know, this gives us an opportunity to also, you know, for community boards to highlight those problems. I was just yesterday in Community Board 9. I was before that Community Board 12. So hearing all these, you know, things also help us to understand what are the problems that even before when Sony was in place or where this was under the purview of DCWP, things that were already happening. So there are a lot of things that are currently in place. It's just that this info sheet that I pasted on. So these are things that are already in place, but perhaps are not being enforced, or perhaps they are not being, you know, widely shared with restaurants or like people who have sidewalk cafes. And, you know, by concentrating all this information under one particular agency, we see that we will have an opportunity to ensure that these things are taken, you know, no more seriously, but taking into account that, you know, you have your enforcement agency, you have your permit agency, all under one umbrella, and that will, you know, in the city's view, will allow us to ensure that things can start to change. Because, you know, like before, you had to go to Department of Sanitation for a violation, and this Department of Buildings, DCWP, DCP, you had to go through a zoning change. So there was so many items that you had to check the box, that now that we can consolidate these issues, we see a value on adding that. And then, you know, it's important that the community boards are highlighting specific locations that need this, you know, they need like changing for us. Yeah.
So Jose, you said that you were at which other community boards? I'm sorry, which other Manhattan community boards where did you just come from?
I presented to all 12. So yeah, today is my last.
Oh man, oh wow, we're the last one on your journey.
No, I still have Community Board 3 and Community Board 2 to do a second presentation, but
okay,
they're missing their votes. So I think you guys, if you guys are voting today, still got 3 and 2 to help them answer questions. We already presented to all 12 of them, and then we're coming back to community boards to, you know, try to answer questions, because as when we first presented, I believe we presented to you guys in August or early September, we were still like, you know, also in conversations with other community boards. So a lot of these things are moving in progress. So the more answers that we get, the more that we can share with the community board.
Sure. Just two things. I want to just clarify, because I was actually out of the city through the summer. I just want to clarify from Angel, what was the how many times have they come forward to present to this committee, for the record?
Open Restaurants was presented to us in July.
Okay, thank you. So because you were at Community Board 10, I did see that community board was one of the ones that ended up voting this down, and their concerns were on sanitation and local input. So I guess because you're here and you were at that meeting and you went through that, and I I'm putting this in the chat only just so that we know what our neighboring community board, one of our neighboring community boards did. I was just wondering if you could speak to that and kind of what you think some of the concerns there were, what was maybe missed or misunderstood, what we should know, considering, again, one of our neighboring community boards.
Definitely. And one of the other community boards voted yesterday to unanimously approve the program. So Community Board 9, the Land Use Committee, unanimously approved the program. So as George mentioned before, there is some issues and some disparities between community boards. There are some community boards that have a lot more issues with the sanitation problems that had not been addressed for many, many years, or issues with the Department of Transportation, in terms of like follow-up and all these different things. And, it's in complete honesty, it's part of like the trust of going with the city and believing that we're going to come back to this and we're going to develop this. When yesterday when we presented to the Community Board 9, something that the question that we keep getting before was like, what are we doing this now, and what is it being developed backwards? That's one of the questions that we keep hearing a lot. But when we introduced the text, we didn't know that the governor was going to extend the executive order to allow sidewalks to continue to operate outdoors. So the city was operating in good faith to ensure that almost 10,000 plus businesses or restaurants did not were left, with the ability to not be able to operate or in the current climate. Now we see more flexibility in indoor dining, but at the moment, this was back in June, we introduced the tax because we needed to move forward as fast as possible to ensure that these restaurants could continue to operate with a small, stop in between. That being said, now that the executive order is extended, we're getting a lot of questions that we should perhaps scale back, come back and do these things. We also pressuring Department of Transportation to ensure that we have a community engagement process as we develop the rules and design of this program. And that's something that we have been able to actually put in the calendar yet. So since there are no dates for this, there is no an actual process that is being made public. Our all intentions are that we will do something similar to the design engagement process with community boards or perhaps with the public in general, either at the board of president level or at the public hearing level. So we're developing that still, but to Community Board 10, I understand that's my community board. I represent Community Board 10. So I know their issues, I know their concerns, and I know they wanted to make sure that their voice was heard, because a lot of businesses are not in compliance with what is happening. And it is perhaps part of the information process and the dissemination of information on the rules and the current rules and guidelines that are in place, which are not the DOT rules, because those are not being rolled out, but they are the rules that are in place from the Department of Consumer and Workers Protection that are not being followed through, right? So those things, perhaps like we heard so many times that these rules were so overcomplicated, that the design guidelines were extremely complicated for restaurants to follow. The application process was overwhelming. You needed a design architect to ensure you had approval and all these different things. And when it became a self-certified program, a lot of people just put their restaurants out there. There's so many people who hasn't even self-certified that are operating, so I don't know what else to say on that, but I understand. I just want to say that I do understand how community boards are voting, and I'm respectful for the sentiment. So if I can help in any way and to answer any questions, I'll be here.
Yeah, thank you for your response. And it's just something that everyone has visibly experienced, but there's so few folks on our board and certainly throughout the general neighborhood understand how exactly these came to be before, how they came to be during the emergency, pandemic, which isn't over, and fully understand what this process looks like going forward. So I just wanted to get some of your thoughts on that. I'll go to George, whose hand is raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Jose was saying. Is that I think it's good for him to explain why it's being done this way, because this way is not right. I mean, this was not the right way to do it. You don't get rid of the one rules and say, you know, we're going to replace them sometime down the road. Trust us. I mean, that's not the right way to do it. But there was a reason for it, right? There is a reason that Jose explained, and you know, there are basic fundamental things here. You know, like streets and sidewalks, they're public property, and the idea that, you know, we give them to private for-profit organizations so that they can make money, right? I mean, there's a fundamental question of whether that's a good use of the public square, as they say. But, you know, we already do that right now. We already do that with sidewalk cabinets. And so really, you know, a real consideration for you all to think about is, well, is it something that we are going to believe in enough so that we can trust the city to come up with regulations, and that there will be a process where you feel like your concerns can be heard, right? Again, it won't be the typical process because they are not coming back with those regulations. But there will be, as Jose was saying, you know, opportunities to like identify issues and problems, and is that going to be good enough? And that's really for you guys to consider. And I think CB10 thought it wasn't good enough, but others have thought it was good enough. And I think it's really, it has to do with, you know, this is your judgment, and it really is a judgment call.
Thank you, George. If there are no other comments from the committee, I'd like to just get some thoughts from attendees. I do see a hand up there. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the hand that I see from the public. Jessica Morris, I have asked you to unmute.
Thanks, Andrew. Again, a voice from a board member no longer serving on this committee, but on public safety and transportation, and also licenses and permits. So, you know, I think first I'll just say to the committee that conditions are powerful in taking a position. So you have that ability to define the context of the position. That being said, I am in the camp of Ivy and Jess Elliott, wondering how street sweeping can happen, municipal service delivery. We live in a neighborhood that has a history of burning garbage in the street because services were not delivered. There is a recognition of the essential economy that this type of provision in an emergency situation has allowed. At the same time, our changing community has recognized how vital its very narrow sidewalks are to people of all mobility levels moving around. And these restaurants, right, that are now activating an expanded footprint with a rule set that is interim at best, they become hubs of goods movement, which DOT has not figured out how to solve. And overlay e-commerce challenges, things coming and going, fast moving bicycles on the sidewalk in these places that are located for attracting pedestrian traffic. I think there are so many issues. The fact that you're here and there is a real recognition of the value that community board members bring to the rulemaking process, I think trust is not easily won, but there is no other place that has robust public process like New York City. So I have some faith that within the context of retrofitting, reforming, and reinventing, we will find some way forward. And the fact that the city is moving fast on changing policy is commendable. Like George said, it's not the right way to do things, but pandemics don't happen every day, every year. So I think there is an opportunity here to make right if we work together, and that is completely optimistic. But I think hearing from us about rats and street sweeping and dumping water that has cleaning solution and all sorts of stank in the side of the street like a sewer in a third world country is not acceptable. The responsibility of the private sector, restaurants that scrape by to stay in business. It's not an easy business, but they do it. And I'm almost done, sorry. They have so much responsibility in the public realm, how they're operating now. And so how do we communicate with them as community partners to really recognize that responsibility in maintaining not just levels of sanitation, but training and protocols to recognize that their footprint has a radius that expands far beyond where they're operating. So to the committee, I think, Jose, thank you for being here. You are a go-to. There is an administrative change at the city level where who knows what happens 4 months from now. And I think we are giving an incredible amount of leeway to that changeover of who's who doing what, where, and how. But the commitment to continue to come to the community board and involve whichever and other committees in the rulemaking process to get to the best result that serves different communities in different ways for where they are in their evolution is essential. So thank you. The question is, have you figured out the street sweeping? It's like the snowplow, but it didn't work really well.
Yeah.
I think the commercial, sorry, just the commercial waste hauling will also have an effect on the sort of the garbage question, but the sort of dumping in the street is a culture in the same way that biking on the sidewalk is a culture. And I think we need to, this is the opportunity to address those cultures as the jurisdictional oversight changes. Street sweeping?
Yeah, thank you for those words. And I pasted like a little excerpt from our Tony text in the chat, and like ensuring that like we are taking this in consideration for like the non-standing zone, delivering zones, bike lanes, bus lanes. All of these things are also part of like the process of development of the roadway program, and those already exist. I keep highlighting these things because a lot of a lot of people say like, oh, the rules are not in place yet. Like all of these rules, or perhaps most of them, are going to be transferred directly to DOT until the end of the executive order. So all these rules are already in place. They were just enforced by different agencies. So I also faced the Department of Buildings, who had a different set of rules in terms of like when you mentioned in the drainage and dumping or where to be located, the garbage and all these issues. For sanitation, we're envisioning for street sweeping, we're envisioning the open restaurants to be seasonally to help with the snow removal and cleaning. There will be enough communication and anticipation with the restaurants before the sidewalk cleaning happens to ensure that these are movable. And the case that the structure is not movable or able to be removed, there's going to be special consideration given to these spaces and places. Again, so the process of the application is still under development. We'll be also considering, like I said, potentially coming back for the roadway cafe to the community board. For the sidewalk cafe, it will remain the same. It will have to come to the community boards, and community board will be able to give their opinion on the application. But we're also considering to have something similar to the actual open roadway cafe. So that can potentially inform also, congregational locations, and when you have like multiple restaurants applying for a whole line, because some things that I think in community board one and that voted also to disapprove was because they having lines of entirely roadway cafe. So you have like 20 in one block. So like a special consideration to these applications will be given when you have concentration of so many of these roadway cafes in this. So I don't have the answers specifically right now for how many days we're anticipating cleaning the street or the process of how we're done. I know sanitation, DOT are meeting Department of City Planning as well as a task force as they develop this, FDNY and NYPD as well, to ensure they know there is proper access for emergency vehicles, ambulances, all different issues that are being taken in consideration.
Thank you very much for the question and the response. At this point, I see a hand. Got me just before I was about to open us up to a motion. So I will recognize Xavier Santiago.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and everyone in the comments laid forth. I think we've been in beyond strange and interesting times during the pandemic. And I do, having been a fly on the wall during the consideration and CB10, there are considerations we should take on board with this. And I appreciate the commentary about the history of the Young Lords and when the Department of Sanitation was neglecting our neighborhood. I will say that there are some really great partners in this community who are doing their level best to survive. And we have others who are not as participatory as we would desire. I think part and parcel and something we should take into consideration is that the amount of street cleaning right now, which we're still on the reduced schedule for the last day of the week. We also have those that are hiring, as should be within the commercial corridors, private sanitation to take away the refuse. But I do think hearing both sides, our culture up here, and I appreciate that commentary. Our culture here is that we tend to have more of those that self-commute, reverse commute in northern Manhattan. I would say that there is not necessarily a culture as was discussed of those that are riding on sidewalks, et cetera, and so on, but more we have a culture of independence, and oftentimes we don't have the internal commutes that most of our fellow brothers and sisters of Manhattan have. Many of us do leave the city, and I think even those that within our business sector, they are facing the same type of challenges. They either commute in or they have businesses outside in the other boroughs. I think with this particular text amendment, I do believe it is somewhat premature in making it permanent, because we haven't had a more statistical analysis, especially as northern Manhattan has had quite the significant loss of businesses. And without having the data in front of me, I would say we've had more than our fair share. And those definitely within our community who do not get PPP and other benefits that the counterparts receive. So I think, although it's not binding in permanence, I do think that we have to take a greater degree of inspection as to how this will impact our community, and especially when it comes to being a permanent solution. Many of our communities still drive, have cars on the street, and there is also the sanitation issue, which even earlier today I'm seeing an impact of. Again, I think it's important for us to really weigh this out, but this committee, I appreciate everyone's participation and input, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Xavier, for your comments. I will now open the floor to a motion, but as I do, I want to be very clear that we should be very clear. Whatever our motion is, I mean, if it's, you know, so when you do make your motion, just be very clear and concise. It's a little difficult today because, you know, I know there's a lot here to chew on, but we do that all the time here at Land Use. So I will open the floor. Do we have a motion with regards to this land use application? Oof. Okay, I see Jessica Elliott's hand has raised. Jessica?
I guess I'll be the one to do it. I would like to put forward a motion to deny the zoning text amendment.
Okay. So do I hear a second to that? I see Jason's hand is up.
Yes, Chair.
Jason
Can I
Villanueva.
add a friendly amendment with the conditions that were placed in the chat?
Of course.
I second the motion.
Do you want to read aloud your conditions quickly? Or I can.
Looking. Sorry. 1, DOT ensure that the community board has an engagement process for approvals of the cafe permits. An example given would be SAPO for street permits. The Department of Buildings with building permits. Second condition, DOT is to provide an enforcement method as a result of this amendment for the sidewalk cafes, as well as to ensure proper safety regulations for both pedestrian walkway and street lighting. Forgive the grammar.
I accept that friendly amendment to my denial.
So to be clear, we have a motion by Jessica Elliott and a second by Jason Villanueva to reject this land use application with the following conditions. DOT ensure that the community board has an engagement process for approvals of cafe permits, e.g. SAPO for street permits and liquor licenses. And 2, DOT is to provide an enforcement method as a result of this amendment for the sidewalk cafes, as well as to ensure proper safety regulations for both pedestrian walkway and street lighting. I will open us up if there's any discussion on this before we go to a vote on this. Angel, is that all right procedurally? Is that clear? Is that motion clear to you?
Yes.
Okay, so if there's any discussion on this motion that has been put forward by Jessica Elliott and seconded by Jason Villanueva.
I'm open to the committee adding recommendations as well. Some people were referencing community boards 10s, as well as their concerns with sanitation. So
I see Yolanda Brown's hand has been raised. So Yolanda.
Hi, yes, I'd like to recommend, I'm not sure how to do this, but that we add in addition to safety and lighting, sanitation.
If you could be, if that's Yolanda's fire truck, that's fine. But if it's not, please mute. I would just ask what you mean when you say you'd like to add sanitation. If you could just clarify a bit here.
Okay, if we look back at the amendment, we can pull that back up for a moment. Okay. It was stated that for the sake of, I'm paraphrasing, for the sake of safety and lightning and violations, and also violations of sanitations, of cleaning, removing the garbage, and those things came up several times in conversation, discussion this evening. And I thought that.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Please continue.
No, that's okay. You may have to do that sometime.
And if I may, Chair, I trust in our staff to assist with the grammar. I promise. I have faith in them. So I also accept that change, if that's okay, Chair.
Okay, great.
Thank you for your trust.
Yeah. Okay, that's just what I wanted to clarify. It's what I thought you meant, but it's okay, and just adding sanitation to the end of point 2. Okay. And Jason's cool with that. Thank you, Yolanda. Is there anything else from the committee before we move forward on this? Okay. Well then, I will read this one more time before we go to a vote. This is vote for no by Jessica Elliott, seconded by Jason Villanueva. DOT to ensure that community boards has an engagement process for approvals of the cafe permits, e.g. SAPO for street permits and liquor licenses. 2, DOT is to provide an enforcement method as a result of this amendment for the sidewalk cafes, as well as to ensure proper safety regulations for both pedestrian walkway, street lighting, and sanitation. Grammar to be dealt with by our district manager. If there are no more comments, then I'm ready to take a vote on this. Okay. So the motion has been clearly stated. Could you please take the roll on that, Angel?
Sure. Yolanda Brown,
Yes.
Jessica Elliott,
Yes.
James
Yes.
Horton. Thanks, Jessica. James Horton,
Yes.
Ivy Hume,
Yes.
Andrew Padilla,
Yes.
Roberto Perez,
Yes.
Jason Villanueva,
Yes.
motion passes.
Fantastic. We got through that. Okay. Next item on our agenda is we're going to go over the public input survey for community district needs, results, insights, and recommendations. And for that, I'm going to turn us over to Angel.
Okie dokie. My favorite time of the year. Fortunately, I have a script to read from so that I don't stick my foot in my mouth. I need to share a presentation, so let me stop this one and put up the other. Bear with me a second, folks. Yes. All righty. So for some of you, this will be slightly redundant. For some of you, this will be new information. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting while I was delaying for time, the community board, as part of its annual statement of needs and budget requests process, has added a formal public input survey into our process. It's the second year doing this formally. And this year, we were very happy to get, a good number of responses. And what I'll be presenting tonight is a summary of the input as it relates to the work of this committee. So the statement of needs is submitted by community boards via a portal created by the Department of City Planning and the Office of Management and Budget. And it's broken up into a set number of policy areas. So you'll see in the presentation a particular policy area. You'll see then target areas that are also reflective of the form that we will be submitting our statement through. I know that I wanted to share that because I know that folks that were responding to the survey and folks that responded to it this year and last year asking, why are these the only questions that we're seeing? And it's because we wanted to match the survey to that process. Okay, with that, I'm going to read the script as it was given to me by Carly under threat of punishment. So good evening. Over the summer, CB11 collected feedback for our budget process through the public input survey for community district needs. Tonight, I'll be presenting a summary of the responses we received. I will start with a very brief overview of the survey's role in the larger budget process and establish the goals for tonight's presentation and discussion. Then I'll get into the survey results relating to the work of the Land Use, Landmarks, and Planning Committee. Specifically, we'll be looking at the Housing, Economic Development, and Land Use Policy section. For newer board members and meeting attendees who might not be familiar with the city's budget process, community boards are given a broad range of responsibilities for advising the city about local budget needs and priorities. Those interested in learning more about CB11's role in the budget process are encouraged to attend our district needs and budget committee meetings. The public input survey is part of CB11's larger community engagement strategy for the annual statement of district needs and budget requests. This year, we collected survey responses from over a time period of 2 months and received a total of 235 responses. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to review the public input related to the work of this committee. We also hope that committee members will engage with the input by providing feedback and making recommendations for additions or revisions to content for our statement of district needs. It's important to note that public input is only one contributing factor to the community board's needs assessment. We will also take our previous positions and the budget consultations with city agencies into account when crafting the final statement of district needs. The Housing, Economic Development, and Land Use Policy area encompasses the work of 3 committees and the services and programs offered through the Department of City Planning, the Department of Buildings, the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, the New York City Housing Authority, the Small Business Service Department, and the Economic Development Corporation. Considering the scope of our committee's work, the needs and requests that come out of this committee will pertain primarily to DCP, HPD, and DOB. Survey participants were asked to select the most important issue relating to housing, economic development, and land use. The top selected answer was affordable housing creation. The second most selected answer was affordable housing preservation. Neighborhood preservation and land use and zoning were also frequently selected by respondents. Not only was affordable housing prioritized in this specific policy area, but it was also among the top 3 selected issues for most pressing needs overall. The next few slides will hone in on affordable housing creation and preservation, as they were the top 2 issues selected. Those are direct quotes, are direct quotes from your neighbors highlighting the impact, need for, and lack of affordable housing in East Harlem. So I'm just gonna pause here for a quick second just to say to all those hearing me read off this piece of paper that we will be adding this presentation to our website, and the full presentation encompassing all the policy areas for all the committees will be shared on the district needs and budget committee page in another week or 2. I continue. Key insights. In their selection of affordable housing creation as the most pressing issue, respondents emphasize the importance of affordable housing. First and foremost, housing is a basic human need and a huge social determinant for an individual's health and well-being. Additionally, affordable housing prevents displacement and encourages neighborhood preservation, which are both desired outcomes identified in the responses we received. More specifically, respondents expressed a need for community preference to ensure that local residents are being prioritized for incoming affordable housing units. Affordable housing is also a solution to homelessness that allows individuals and families to achieve financial success and positively contribute to the economy. Respondents also identified the shortcomings of affordable housing as it currently exists. Current affordable housing units are not affordable enough for many East Harlem residents, and many of the units offered are studios and 1-bedroom units that aren't suitable for families. There were a lot of responses about vacant lots in East Harlem and how they should be utilized for affordable housing. Often, when we speak about affordable housing, we're specifically referring to new rental units created through mandatory inclusionary housing or other public funding mechanism. However, respondents also would like to see more opportunities for affordable home ownership in East Harlem. Finally, respondents emphasize the importance of establishing community benefits agreements with developers when they build in East Harlem. affordable housing preservation. There was a significant amount of hesitancy about new development in East Harlem, even for the purpose of creating affordable housing. Rather, many would prefer to prioritize the preservation of affordable housing over the addition of new units. Respondents frequently mentioned the poor condition of affordable and public housing developments and the need for better maintenance in these buildings. Participants also highlighted the number of vacant buildings in East Harlem, specifically along 3rd Avenue, that can be better utilized as affordable housing. Finally, many respondents made the connection between affordable housing preservation and the much needed investment in NYCHA. Many of East Harlem's affordable units are, in fact, public housing units. Investing in NYCHA would go a long way in preserving our neighborhood's affordable housing stock. Other needs. Neighborhood preservation was a top land use concern among respondents. Long-term residents fear being priced out due to increasing rents and affordable units above their income levels. Displacement of long-term residents impacts the cultural fabric of East Harlem. Additionally, some residents view the influx of development as a disruption to the neighborhood's character. Some residents emphasize the importance of zoning and land use in addressing the need for housing and economic stimulus. Most respondents advocated for zoning to allow deeper affordability, while some others advocated for more market rate housing to promote a mix of incomes in the neighborhood. There were some responses that suggested the impact of zoning on public safety and quality of life, specifically as it relates to treatment facilities in the area. There were a number of responses that highlighted the complexity and inaccessibility of the discussion around zoning and land use. Many residents are expected to participate and engage in a process they don't understand. By the time they feel the impacts of zoning and land use changes, it is often too late. Finally, there was a recommendation that the city begin taxing vacant lots and buildings to incentivize absentee property owners to build. Gotcha. Before we move on to next steps, I'd like to ask for feedback from the committee about these results. Do you agree that affordable housing creation is the most important issue related to this policy area? Should the executive committee consider selecting a different issue to prioritize? Did we cover everything, or is there something you think should be included in our final community needs assessment? So we'll pause there to hear feedback on that, and then I'll read the last slide.
Okay, committee, are there any thoughts or questions regarding the presentation? Jason Villanueva.
Thank you, Chair. I just first and foremost want to say thank you to Angel, the staff, and everyone who was involved in this survey. I have to say the results that we received this year in comparison to previous years were astounding in the sense of creating a pathway of a strategic plan to do the work. And this presentation, I found it extremely informative. And being on this committee for the few months that I've been, it has been a constant concern and a robust complaint from both the members as well as our constituents about the concern about preserving affordable housing and more importantly, creating it. A lot of people are feeling displaced. There's a big concern with homelessness, and the materialistic or capitalistic investment would be to provide more opportunities. So I'm in full agreement with what I saw. And again, I just wanted to thank the staff for their work.
Thank you.
Believe in their grammar.
Thank you, Jason. Yolanda Brown.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Angel. And it's really good when we're able to go back to the constituents to whom we serve and to hear their voices. And then having said that, we should put ourselves in place to advocate for the things that matter to the community. Because one thing to ask someone's input, and then if we don't take up their inputs, take up their cause, it would cause them later on to never even be engaged or involved. So I think this is a great continuation. And thank you again for the clarity and concise way in which you presented it.
Sure thing.
Thank you, Yolanda. Are there any other thoughts from the committee on the presentation we've seen before? Okay, Jessica Elliott, you are recognized.
Thank you, Andrew. I think I agree with what's been said, and I especially wanted to note the vacant lot concerns. I think as a primary for me realization of this, of just being in this neighborhood and seeing all of the lots that are deteriorating and housing that's been boarded up for development. There just that needs to be resolved, and we need to have more housing and more affordable housing. And I agree that with Jason that it's been a concern that's been raised almost every single time we have a presentation come forward, that the affordability is not low enough, and there are not enough units, there are not enough family sized units. And I think that, these two priorities are should be top priorities.
Thank you, Jessica. Are there any other thoughts from the committee on the presentation? Jessica, do you have something else, or is your hand just still raised?
Nope, sorry.
Okay. I just wanted to also reiterate, just say thank you to the work that has been done by Angel, by Carly, by the District Needs and Budget Committee, which I'm also a part. This is far and away more responses than the last time, and that was a lot of legwork that folks did. So thank you. I guess one note I would make, one clarification. I believe in the slide. Angel, could you go back to the slide with where everything was ordered for
The
what
graph?
is? Yeah, the graph, the pie chart. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I think I just wanted to kind of, I guess, when we're asking ourselves like, oh, well, is affordable housing creation or preservation the most important thing? I think it's important to note that 1, 2, so 1, 2 on that list, and then number 5, right? So affordable housing creation, affordable housing preservation, commercial rent stabilization, condition of public housing, gentrification, housing support services, to a degree, land use and zoning, more public housing. There's all of real estate development trends being a concern. All of those things are really about our community's desire to remain and fear that they can't. And so I just wanted to make sure that, we don't sometimes get too lost in like the actual terms, like people express it in different ways. And in a survey, sometimes it's hard to like gather that. But what I see when I read this is our community is worried they're not going to be here in a number of different ways that they've expressed that. And so I just always, I just want to highlight that, and then just push us to always be thinking about creative and sometimes even extra legal ways that we can make sure our community stays, because over these next few months, as we see these, more and more tenants being brought in for non-payments before and during the pandemic, things are going to get really hairy. We didn't lose as many people here as other neighborhoods because of the moratoriums. So our neighborhoods didn't empty out in the way some more gentrified neighborhoods had. But we're really looking down a dark path. And I think that this survey, from those responses, the many ways our community indicated that concern, I think the survey clearly lays that out.
I
Angel, I'm
agree.
sorry.
Yeah, I don't get to raise my hand because of the posting. Yeah, so like, agreeing with Andrew, like what's being communicated, well, besides agreeing with Andrew, I think there's 2 takeaways from the survey. I think one is, and this is also tying into Yolanda's point from earlier, is that our recommendations are in line with what the community is asking for. So this is a kind of a reaffirmation that we're pointing in the right direction. However, that more needs to be done, right? To Andrew's point. And, what are we recommending, or what are we advocating for and encouraging from the current set of tools? And then what can't be addressed by the current set of tools, and what, new tools can we propose, right? Like every policy that's put out is immediately criticized, and that's just how it is. That's fine. That's how you improve things. But taking into account, like I've been with, working for this board for 11 years, right? And there were things discussed 11 years ago that were just impossible, not even like, just you would be laughed out of the room, that are now reality, right? So things that are currently, like today in 2021, that, this administration or this policy, kind of environment or community would be like, no way, are going to be reality in the future if and only if we recommend them and advocate and push for them, right? Like there's plenty of creativity on this board and in this community and throughout the city and the community that's advocating for people in need and people that need assistance, to get creative and put things on the table. So I say that as an encouragement, both to the respondents to the survey and the attendees at our meetings, but also to our membership, like push the hell out of the envelope, because you never know what's going to stick, right? And sure, the last thing we recommended made some progress, but didn't make as much progress. So now it's, how do we get the rest of that progress, right? So it's the constant, always struggle to get more and more and more, like to the point of these vacant lots that, I do not know how old Andrew is. I'm gonna take a wild guess that his entire life, those buildings have been empty, right? Your entire life, those buildings on 3rd Avenue have been empty. And that's a real shame, right? Because here are folks in this community growing up, walking past these buildings, then growing to an age of saying, hey, something should be done, growing into the policy proposal age, and still nothing's done. And why is that? Where something could have been done and folks could be living there, right? Folks that are otherwise unhoused, otherwise doubled up, there's commercial activity that's being lost, opportunities that are being lost. And why? Because nothing's been done yet. That's not to say that nothing can't be done going forward. And I think ideas like that, like issues like that and other issues are things that we should be, never taking our eye off the ball on and never stopping pushing, like just constantly push, because that's the only way it happens. If you don't even make an attempt, like they'll just stay empty, and Andrew's kids will be here having this conversation,
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was like, yeah, my kids will be here looking for affordable housing, and there'll be vacant buildings all throughout the neighborhood, all throughout the city, and they'll be like, how do I get an affordable apartment?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just I was
you didn't.
That bugged me out. You were done. Were your comment?
All done.
Okay, I see Jessica Elliott's hand.
I'm sorry, one more quick thing as we come back to this pie chart. I was busy taking notes, but I just wanted to lift up what appears to be the third top choice, which was the condition of public housing. I've seen nothing but article and activism and social media about the conditions of public housing. And I keep going back to the time they gave out turkeys for Thanksgiving and no one in the public housing could cook the turkey because, ovens aren't working, or, it's just like unimaginable, the conditions that are being experienced in public housing and Section 8 housing, the attentiveness of landlords to address problems and NYCHA. So I think we should be sure to uplift that third top priority as well.
Thank you, Jessica, especially because of we have the highest concentration of public housing of any congressional district in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other thoughts, concerns, before I throw to the public and see if they have any. I see Ivy.
Hi, sorry, I just have one thing. And I guess I'm just really gonna go for it if Angel says that we should just be bold. When I was filling this out, and I think it was the meeting, it was the sorry, I'm not being very articulate right now. It was the meeting, whatever, the open house or what, the town hall, excuse me. That's what I was trying to remember. At the town hall, I mentioned like trash receptacles, and Gail Brewer reacted to that really positively and said, you know, this is something small, it's tangible. Maybe this is something we can actually kind of address. And I think it is a quality of life issue. I see people in the neighborhood reacting really strongly to quality of life concerns recently. And I think, you know, we even, the one meeting we had in person, like 4 people showed up to complain about quality of life things. And I think, you know, maybe we could design a trash receptacle that really seals itself well. And it might sound really silly, but I think it could be fun, or to get like feedback from people in the community on what would work and try to actually get something like that funded and built, because we know that what is in place doesn't work, and the trash problem's out of control. So.
Thank you, Ivy. And I want to say thank you for bringing that up, because that was something that Gail had mentioned at a previous full board meeting that really stuck with me as well. And so, you know, if at some point you would like to maybe try and continue a conversation with her to better understand kind of, you know, it seemed like a simple fix, right? So like, how can we just get that done? Because if you look, the trash cans that we have here on 110 are much different than the ones that you have just a couple zip codes down, just one zip code down, and the rats can get into ours and seemingly don't as much into the others. So I don't know all the details on that. It seems like a simple fix to get our streets a bit cleaner. And so I would just wanted to say, thank you for bringing that up, and would like to continue a conversation and a dialogue with you and Gail on that to see if maybe we can deal with that. It seems simple. There could be some bureaucratic reason why it isn't, but yeah, a lot of it is just the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Are there any other thoughts or comments before I turn this over to the public? Okay, so are there any questions from the public or comments regarding what we have seen from this presentation and heard from our community on the pressing needs that they are facing with regards to housing, economic development, and land use? I do not see any hands. Okay. Angel, are there any more thoughts from you on this? You said you had another slide.
I do. I won't share any more thoughts because I never can stop myself from talking, but I will go to the next slide.
Was that a bad idea to ask you to share more thoughts?
Yeah, always. It's always a bad idea. I need time limits. So I'll go to next steps unless you really want me to talk about it. So next steps in terms of this process, right? So yeah, we want to hear your thoughts, but each committee gets 2 cracks at this, you know, next month. So after each committee reviews the public input, the district needs and budget committee will hold a public hearing at their next meeting. That meeting is scheduled for September 30th this month. The executive committee will then finalize the most pressing needs for each policy area, and the staff will draft the statement of district needs. Next month, we'll be discussing budget requests to accompany our needs at each committee. And at the October full board meeting, the full board will vote on the final statement of district needs and budget requests that will be submitted to the city. And then the advocacy starts, right? Pester our elected officials, pester the administration, et cetera. Any questions, comments, or concerns about the data collected or the CB11 budget process can be directed to, this is my favorite part, Carly Wine, not me. Assistant District Manager at cwine@cb11m.org. just to echo what Jason said before, and like thank you for like, you know, addressing it to the staff, but the star of this thing is Carly. She's just taking this thing and run with it. And you know, she deserves all the kudos. We've been doing our part, but she's really been driving the train on this one. So I just wanted to say that for the record. She's done an excellent job. And that's all I have for tonight. And I'm happy to address any questions about process or about the results. Like I said earlier, this presentation will be shared along with the agenda on the website for the, you know, on the calendar entry for this meeting. And then the full presentation with everything will be on the District Needs and Budget Committee page on our site once all the committees are done.
Thank you, Angel. And I just want to reiterate, you know, the thanks to you and to Carly for your work on this. And, you know, the way that Carly really definitely tried to get out there, you know, she was tabling on 125th, the way she was trying to get more input, you know, from folks. There's still time to get input from our community. Yeah. And on my District Needs and Budget hat, I know that we would definitely appreciate it. And as a community member, you know, it's just essential, especially because, you know, it was hard for me to get people to fill out this survey and think that it mattered, right? You think that anything that why would I fill this out? What is a community board? Who the hell cares? Yeah. I see everything collapsing around me. What is the point? But the point is to get people together to collectively organize around something or another, right? I mean, it could be small, whatever it is, but it's about getting like-minded folks together to push on something, to try and move the needle in one direction somewhere. And so, you know, it's hard to get people in this community to know what we are, to think that it's relevant and that it's worth their time. And so, you know, there's only so far that these recommendations, these sorts of input surveys, they're only at the end of the day going to get a slice. We're just a tiny slice of community opinion, and that's just going to be a tiny slice. But any work we can do to expand that out and get in more thoughts, more diverse thoughts, you know, will just make our work better and our recommendations stronger, and the possibility that we can move the needle somewhere greater.
Certainly. I will add something, even though I said I wouldn't. You're absolutely right. This is really hard, right? I'm pretty sure I'm bald now because of this work. But even though they're little things do move, right? So when I came here a billion years ago, Frances was on this fire watch tower thing. Nobody knew what she was talking about. And she just stepped up, kept on it forever. And next thing you know, boom. And how many people are proud of that, right? And in this community, right, that walk by it, love it. Climb up there like, oh my God, I'm so happy, right? And there are a number of other things, right? Like, you know, even the recommendations and the, you know, the rezoning, like that ended up with those buildings. You know, nobody was talking about the parking lot in the 25th precinct. And people got to start living there in a couple of years, right? The Fortune Society conversation we had earlier is informed by conversations this board has had many times. It's driving home that point. Deeper affordability, keep pushing it. Have we gotten it perfect yet? No, but goodness gracious, they said 30 to 60. Who in the world was thinking of that? And there they go, right? And there they go, and they're coming, like they came and spoke to us in 2018. Like, what do you need? And we pushed back and hit them with everything you guys ever say, right? And that's ever said in these meetings, right? I just bludgeon everybody. You know, of course, with them, it was easy because they were receptive, right? And given their mission, you know, it's easier to do. It's just a matter of financing it. But there you go. And then people are going to live there, right? And in our community where we see our brothers and sisters and our neighbors struggling, cannot find anywhere to live. And the population that they're going to serve, just to continue that example, are you serious? You know, like those guys can't live anywhere, right? And a couple of months ago, we heard the presentation for like the, you know, the homeless, you know, LGBT youth. Like, come on, like where does that happen? But it's gonna, right? And those are, you know, they're not the biggest swings and, you know, biggest swings and the biggest accomplishments, but they're super meaningful. And we're going to continue doing that, right? Through, like, you know, you're going to continue doing that because it's your work, and to benefit your community. So like, yes, like, you know, what you said, Andrew, like, you can keep encouraging people to get to that table, push these members, push them, because it actually won't take that much pushing. Like, you don't have to push Andrew and Jessica and Yolanda to care about the community. But if you have great ideas that maybe those three didn't think about, they're going to be receptive. And next thing you know, it's a recommendation. And next thing you know, it's something that we're pushing in our statement. And then we're driving home with developers, with elected officials, right? The next step in growing the survey is next year, hopefully, we won't have this pandemic scaring people off the street. So we could do more street activity. And hopefully in the next, you know, in this cycle, we'll be able to really hit our electeds on, look, this is really important. We worked really hard on this. Elected official, fill in the blank, and you need to, you know, work on this. Now I promise I'll shut up.
Thank you, Angel. So I see a hand in the public. It's Jessica Morris. So former committee member, going to ask Jessica quickly to give her thoughts here before we wrap up this section. I'm going to. Oh, yeah, I can hear you. Just
I've got the power already. You gave it to me, and I don't go quietly, but hopefully you guys don't mind my input. Keep up the good work, all good things. My comment is landmarks. The fact that this committee is land use landmarks and planning. I think landmarks is a sorry representation of preservation and the importance of preservation in East Harlem, a changing community. So I think, Yolanda, your comment regarding, you know, the underutilized properties, Third Avenue specifically, that falls into a push for preservation. And I think there is an enormous amount of momentum behind increasing energy efficiency through retrofit. And there are dollars and there are programs at all levels to support the investment in turning these things into viable places for people to live affordably. So, you know, I think for, and I'm curious about the eyebrow raise, because, yeah, no, I said affordably and your eyebrows hit the ceiling. So, but I think that frame of
that wasn't about you. I was just opening my eyes because I'm falling asleep.
Sure. No, but preservation with regard to connecting to programs for landlords to understand where their investments in, you know, now is the time to sort of not drop those buildings and put up new ones in certain cases. That recognition of the value along Lexington Avenue, the value of some of these buildings that need a retrofit and the programs that are out there. So I'm not sure where the language is, where the ask is, but landmarks, I think preservation, there's a strong push amongst different stakeholders in the community who are reinvesting and making sure that the investments in their properties and the areas around them make a difference to neighbors. So I think preservation is key to not just preserving affordable housing. That's a part of it, absolutely. And I don't know technically what that kind of overlay is, but I think the preservation retrofit frame of reinvestment is, there's all sorts of pipelines to supportive programs that could help in moving that needle in a way that hasn't been able to, it's been stuck for a long time. So I guess there's some research to do there. I don't know what it is, but I guess I'm now on the budget committee as well, so I can look into it a little bit further when we all convene there next week.
Thank you, Jessica. And I think it's an important point. Are there any other thoughts? If not, okay. If not, then we will move on to old business. Is there any old business to bring to the fore? Is there any new business to bring to the fore? I will say in terms of new business, it's not really business as much as a thank you to everyone for being so concise and helpful today. This is the first meeting I've chaired with the community board. So I just wanted to make sure that I thanked everyone on the committee and everyone in the public for just being so concise and helpful and attentive to detail throughout tonight's meeting. I think we're doing another roll call. Angel?
Yep. Yolanda Brown,
Present.
Jessica Elliott,
Present.
James Horton,
Present.
Ivy Hume,
Present.
Andrew Padilla,
Present.
Roberto Perez,
Present.
Jason Villanueva.
Present.
You have quorum.
Fantastic. So I will now entertain everyone's favorite motion. Do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion
Second.
by Yolanda, seconded by Jessica?
Jessica.
Elliott? Yeah, all right.
Yes.
Anyone have a problem with that? No?
I don't have a problem.
Okay.
Have a great
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Have a wonderful night, everybody. Take care of yourselves.
Have a great evening, folks. Take care.
Sent y'all the meeting minutes.
Thank
Have a good night.
you.